mantras of our Divine Mother. Our Divine Mother says no human will can finally prevail against the Divine's will. Let us put ourselves deliberately and exclusively on the side of the Divine, and the victory is ultimately certain. With always our love and blessings, says our Divine Mother. Sri Aurobindo's Savitri, Book 3, the Book of the Divine Mother, Canto 2, the Adoration of the Divine Mother, page 357, new stanza. Thus was a seed cast into endless time. A word is spoken, or a light is shown. A moment sees the ages toil to express. So, flashing out of the timeless, leap the worlds. An eternal instant is the cause of the years. All he had done was to prepare a field. His small beginnings asked for a mighty end. For all that he had been must now new shape. In him her joy to embody, to enshrine her beauty and greatness in his house of life. But now his being was too wide for self. His heart's demand had grown immeasurable. His single freedom could not satisfy. Her light, her bliss he asked for earth and men. But vain are human power and human love to break earth's seal of ignorance and death. His nature's might seemed now an infant's grasp. Heaven is too high for outstretched hands to seize. This light comes not by struggle or by thought. In the mind's silence, the transcendent acts, and the hushed heart hears the unuttered word. A vast surrender was his only strength. A power that lives upon the heights must act, bring into life's closed room the immortal's air, and fill the finite with the infinite. All that denies must be torn out and slain, and crushed the many longings for whose sake we lose the one for whom our lives were made. Now other claims had hushed in him their cry. Only he longed to draw her presence and power into his heart and mind and breathing frame. Only he yearned to call forever down her healing touch of love and truth and joy into the darkness of the suffering world. His soul was freed and given to her alone. Words of our Lord Sri Aurobindo. Topic: the Mother and her mission. Our Lord Sri Aurobindo once said, "My life is not on the surface for men to see." Although this applies to the Divine Mother as well, we may yet mention a few significant dates and features of her life. Our Divine Mother was born in Paris on 21st Feb 1878. Even as a child, she had unusual dreams, visions, and spiritual experiences, a constant feeling that she had a certain work, a mission to fulfill upon earth. She was a brilliant student and acquired a great mastery in painting and music. In the early years of the 20th century, she went to Algeria and gained a profound knowledge of occultism. But the call of the Supreme was always uppermost in her life, and in Paris she became the center of a group of ardent seekers and idealists. While pursuing a deep inner spiritual life, our Divine Mother had frequent visions in which she was guided by spiritual personages, many of whom she met physically later in life. One in particular she called Krishna, the Lord of the Gita. When she came to Pondicherry on 29th March 1914 and met Sri Aurobindo, she immediately recognized in him the Krishna of her vision and knew that her place and her work were here with him in India. The next day, she recorded in her prayers and meditations, "It matters little that there are thousands of beings plunged in the densest ignorance. He whom we saw yesterday is on earth. His presence is enough to prove that a day will come when darkness shall be transformed into light, and thy reign shall indeed be established upon earth." Our Divine Mother collaborated with Sri Aurobindo in starting the monthly Arya. But after a few months, due to the exigencies of the First World War, she had to go back to France. In 1916, she sailed for Japan and finally returned to Pondicherry in 1920, never to leave again. In 1926, Sri Aurobindo decided to withdraw into seclusion for more concentrated yogic work, entrusting the Divine Mother with the responsibility of the inner and outer life of the small group of sadhaks who had gathered around them. Thus was born the Sri Aurobindo Ashram. From the very beginning, the task of giving a concrete shape to Sri Aurobindo's vision was entrusted to the Divine Mother. The creation of a new world, a new humanity, and a new society, expressing and embodying the new consciousness, was the work undertaken by her. By the very nature of things, it is a collective idea that calls for a collective effort so that it may be realized in terms of an integral human perfection. The ashram and its international center of education, founded and built by the Divine Mother, were the first step towards the fulfillment of this goal. Sri Aurobindo Society and Auroville are further steps in broadening the base of this endeavor to establish harmony between the soul, body, spirit, and nature, and heaven and earth in the collective life of humanity. Our Divine Mother has stated once, "I am French by birth and early education. I am Indian by choice and predilection. In my consciousness, there is no antagonism between the two. On the contrary, they combine very well and complete one another. I knew also that I can be of service to both equally, for my only aim in life is to give a concrete form to Sri Aurobindo's great teaching. And in his teaching, he reveals that all the nations are essentially one and means to express the divine unity upon earth through an organized, harmonious diversity. Our Divine Mother says, never forget that you are not alone. Never forget that you are not alone. The Divine is with you, helping and guiding you. He is the companion who never fails, the friend whose love comforts and strengthens. Have faith, and He will do everything for you, says our Divine Mother. Next, words of our Divine Mother, taken from the collective works of our Divine Mother, Volume 2, Words of Long Ago. Topic, Meetings. This is dated 14 May 1912. Question by a child to the Divine Mother. Sweet Mother, what is my place in the universal work? For this, our Divine Mother says, we all have a role to fulfill, a work to accomplish, a place which we alone can occupy. Let me repeat. Our Divine Mother says we all have a role to fulfill, a work to accomplish, a place which we alone can occupy. But since this work is the expression, the outer manifestation of the inmost depth of your being, but since this work is the expression, the outer manifestation of the inmost depth of our being, we can become conscious of its definitive form only when we become conscious of this depth within ourselves. This is what sometimes happens in case of true conversion. The moment we perceive the transfiguring light and give ourselves to it without reserve, we can suddenly and precisely become aware of what we are made of the purpose of our existence on earth. But this enlightenment is exceptional. It is brought about within us by a whole series of efforts and inner attitudes. And one of the essential conditions, if we want to achieve and maintain within ourselves these attitudes, these soul states, is to devote part of our time each day to some impersonal action. Every day we must do something useful for others. Our Divine Mother says, until we know the essential thing we are intended to do, we must therefore find a temporary occupation which will be the best possible manifestation of our present capacities and goodwill. Then we shall give ourselves to this occupation with conscientiousness and perseverance, knowing that it may well be only a stage, and that with the progress of our ideal and our energies, we shall certainly one day be led to see more clearly the work we must accomplish. to the extent that we lose the habit of referring everything to ourselves and learn more and more to give ourselves more completely with greater love to earth and man, we shall see our horizons widen, our duties become more numerous and clear. Our Divine Mother says, we shall find out our action follows a general line of progression determined by our own particular temperament. Indeed, the successive occupations we shall hold before we become conscious of the definitive form of our action will always point in the same direction, be of the same type and mode, which is the spontaneous expression of our character, our nature, our own characteristic vibration. Our Divine Mother says the discovery of this tendency, this particular orientation, should come about quite naturally. It is a matter of taste and free choice, beyond all outer selfish considerations. People are often blamed for choosing an action for themselves which does not correspond to their abilities. There is a slight confusion here. Those who freely set out to accomplish their favorite work cannot, in my opinion, be on the wrong track. This work must surely be the expression of their own particular tendency. But their mistake lies in wanting to accomplish this work all at once in its entirety, in its integrality, in depth, and above all on the surface, forgetting that the very conception of the work is imperfect as they are imperfect, and that to be wise, they should add to the knowledge of what they wish to do the more immediate and practical knowledge of what they are capable of doing at the present moment. By taking both these factors into account, they can employ themselves with a minimum waste of time and energy. But few people act with so much insight and wisdom. And it very often happens that one who is seeking his way falls into one of these two other possible errors. Either he takes his desires for realities, that is, he overestimates his present strength and capacity and imagines that he is capable of immediately assuming a place and a role which he can honorably fulfill after many years of methodical and persevering effort. Or he underestimates his latent powers and deliberately confines himself, in spite of his deeper aspirations, to a task which is far beneath his abilities and which will gradually extinguish within him the light that could have shone for others. It seems difficult at first to steer clear of these pitfalls and find the balanced way, the middle way, but we have a surer pointer to guide us. Above all, whatever we undertake should not be done for the purpose of self assertion. If we are attached to fame and glory, to the esteem of our peers, we are soon led to make concessions to them. And if we seek any opportunity to admire ourselves, it becomes easy to make ourselves out to be what we are not. And nothing more obscures the ideal within us. Our Divine Mother says we should never tell ourselves, openly or indirectly, I want to be great. What occasion can I find for myself in order to become great? On the contrary, we should tell ourselves, there must certainly be something I can do better than anyone else, since each one of us is a special mode of manifestation of the divine power, which in its essence is one in all. However humble and modest it may be, this is precisely the thing to which I should devote myself, and in order to find it, I shall observe and analyze my tastes, tendencies, and preferences, and I shall do it without pride or excessive humility. Whatever others may think, I shall do it just as I breathe, just as the flowers smell sweet, quite simply, quite naturally, because I cannot do otherwise. As soon as we have abolished within us, even for a moment, all egoistic desires, all personal and selfish aims, we can surrender to this inner spontaneity, this deep inspiration, which will enable us to commune with the living and progressive forces of the universe. Our Divine Mother says the conception of our work will inevitably grow more perfect as we grow more perfect ourselves, and to realize this growing perfection, no effort to exceed ourselves should be neglected, but the work we perform must become always more and more joyful, spontaneous, like water welling from a pure spring. Question: Sweet Mother, what's the greatest obstacles in ourselves to our consecration to impersonal work? For this, our Divine Mother says, regarded from the most general point of view, this obstacle is indistinguishable from the very reason for the work to be accomplished. It is the present state of imperfection of the physical matter. Since we are made up of an imperfect substance, we cannot but share in this imperfection. Therefore, whatever degree of perfection, consciousness, or knowledge is possible to our innermost being, the very fact that it incarnates in a physical body gives rise to obstacles to the purity of its manifestation. And on the other hand, the aim of its incarnation is victory over these obstacles, the transformation of matter. We must therefore not be surprised or saddened if we encounter obstacles within ourselves, for every single being on earth has difficulties to overcome. The cause of this imperfection may become apparent to us from two points of view: one is general and the other individual. From the general point of view, the imperfection of matter comes from its lack of receptivity to more subtle forces which are to be manifested through it. But this lack of receptivity itself has been of the main cause, and to explain them would lead us too far away from the heart of our subject. Besides, I think that the last analysis, all difficulties lie in the illusion of personality, that is, the illusion that one thing can be distinct from the whole. To avoid speculating on the necessity of this illusion for the very existence of the universe as we know it, I shall consider the question solely from the terrestrial and human angle. This illusion of a self separate from the whole brings about two tendencies within ourselves. The first comes from an unconscious need for identification with the whole. But the very fact of illusion of the personality, each one conceives this identification only as an absorption into himself and seeks more or less to be the center of this whole. As a result, in proportion to his intellectual or physical strength, each one attempts to draw to himself everything he is conscious of in order to continually increase his personality. This is the outcome of a desire which is justified in a sense to become conscious of everything, but ignorant in expression. For if a way to become conscious of everything doesn't exist, it certainly does not lie in trying to draw everything to oneself, which is absurd and unrealizable, but in identifying one's consciousness with the consciousness of the whole, which demands the very opposite action and attitude. Our Divine Mother says the second tendency, which is in fact a normal consequence of the first, is an excessively conservative spirit, a fixity of the whole nature, intellectual, moral, and physical, which makes it impossible for us to transform ourselves as rapidly as we should in order to be always in harmony with the law of the universal progress. It is as if the individual were afraid of not being different enough from others if he encouraged too free and large an exchange with the whole. Moreover, this fixity comes from the desire to appropriate and the error of believing that we can own something in the universe. We think that the elements we made of are our own. Consciously or unconsciously, we want to hold on to them for ourselves, while at the same time, we are quite ready to add to them by drawing other elements to ourselves. But we forget that since there's no real separation, we can receive nothing if we do not give. Our Divine Mother says we must be a link in the chain. The link does not grow bigger at the expense of its neighbors, but when it is faithfully transmits the current it has received, it will receive another, and the more complete and swift its transmission, the more it will be brought into contact with a greater number of forces or things for it to use or manifest. And so, little by little, by taking and keeping nothing for itself, it can become aware of everything by communing with everything. Foreseeing the objections which could be raised, I shall add this. When I speak of illusion of personality, I am not denying that each one has a special mode of manifestation. Differentiation doesn't mean division. Why could there be so many countries count? Why should there be so many countless links in the chain if each one had its own function? And here another comparison is needed to complete the first, for any comparison is necessarily incomplete. If we consider ourselves as the cells of an immense living organism, we shall immediately understand that a cell which is dependent for its own life on the life of the whole can separate itself from it only at the risk of destruction, does in fact have its own special part to play in the whole. But this role is precisely what is most profoundly spontaneous in our being. No egoistic assertion of our personality is needed to discover it. On the contrary, the more fully we give ourselves to an impersonal action, the more this role will gain in strength and clarity within us. But this role is precisely what constitutes the true individuality, since it is our own special way of manifesting the divine essence, which is one in everything and in all, says our Divine Mother.